Did you just throw your phone?
No, I did not throw the phone.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Beg Pardon, the podcast that dares you to say it again. As always, I'm Anthony, joined by Carlos. And hey Carlos.
I wanted to go for the Full House entrance there.
Yeah, we'll freeze frame just like that point and like make a GIF out of it. But welcome, right? Well, welcome guys to the podcast. That dares you to say it again. Beg Pardon is kind of a podcast about everything and nothing at the same time. Carlos and I give our opinions on topics you never asked about, and give you our opinions that you never asked for. So, welcome to the show. So today we are actually talking about conventions. I forgot what we were talking about for like a brief second. Pop culture conventions. And we're not so much focusing on one, so it's not going to be one about D23 or one about Comic-Con, but it's going to be kind of just a broad conversation about pop culture conventions in general. So grab your cape, grab your cosplay, and let's go to nerd school. So Carlos, tell us a little bit about pop culture conventions. Educate me.
The pop culture conventions they're really a unique thing when you think about it, because for a long time, people gathered at these things just for comic books and related material. Once the movie started taking off, it kind of became cool to be a nerd, so to speak. And then everyone was like, well, I read a comic book in my life. And then all these conventions started everywhere. But they've always had them. They've had comic conventions. They had Star Trek conventions, the big one. Disney started one with D23. They have a Star Wars celebration. There's all these different things. And it's just basically a place where people who are like-minded in terms of what they like pop culturally will gather and kind of express themselves with no judgment. It's like the Planet Fitness of the world, whereas it's no judgment-free zone. You can go there. They might have free pizza too. I don't know.
That's only on Fridays. That's only on Fridays.
Yeah, that's the warmer right there.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of like just a location where people that historically might feel ostracized or kind of out of place in their own communities or high school or college or whatever it is, and it's just kind of like a community from your explanation, community kind of where everyone gets together and they can just kind of celebrate the things that they're passionate about. Yeah. I kind of ended that sentence as a question. I didn't mean to, but yeah, or as a statement.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like you'll see a group of Ninja Turtles or a bunch of Hogwarts students, and you think nothing of it. In the street, you'd be like, "Oh my gosh!" But at Comic-Con or D23, you're just like, "Yeah, that's cool. Jack Sparrow's over there if you want to go take a picture." Like it's just so common.
Right, and they've been around for a while. So I guess the question that I have in this situation is, given everything, especially now, especially with COVID-19 and everything that happened this year, even future conventions, are we going to see less and less people going to these conventions? I guess kind of what are the benefits other than that sense of family, that sense of community? What are the benefits of us going to those conventions whenever, if I really want to feel part of that community? We're in the age now where I can virtually attend anything I want. I can virtually be around anyone that I please to be around, and I can surround myself with like-minded people. So why would I even want to go to a physical convention somewhere in the United States or somewhere in the world?
So I think, like we touched on in the last episode with the movie theaters, you want to feed off that energy though.
Right.
So like some people spend hundreds of hours on their costumes, because they want people to see their dedication to their fandom. And you can stream some of the live events, and watch the trailers or watch the panels, which is fine. That's all you want to do. But if you really want to like check out the merchandise or really dive into these almost like theologian conversations of Superman's mythos or who would win in a fight with people who can give you like an intelligent conversation about it, as opposed to like, I don't know, dude, it's fake. Like you're going to want to go. Yeah. And I think it's one of those things too that, so like roughly basically San Diego Comic-Con has 135 people. 135,000 people, sorry.
Oh, I was
135
like,
people is nice.
I was like, that's really unimpressive.
That's less than TED Talk, which has 1,500. And then D23 has about 100,000 people. So there's so many people that go to these things, and that's just because they sold out of tickets. That's not necessarily to say like that's just anybody who wanted to go.
Right.
So I think the benefit is just kind of feeding off that crowd, you know, and walking around and seeing all the different costumes or seeing the artwork or getting that comic or that drawing or that figurine that you've been looking for and you couldn't find anywhere, like that type of thing. It's just all collectors, basically.
Got you. Yeah, and from my personal experience, I have not been to any conventions ever. Obviously I went to D23 because I was with you whenever I went there.
I was going to say you're a filthy liar when you've been to one.
We went there. But, so here's my take on that. It was like, and I'm trying to think of like the words to like articulate it. It was really intense. And I think that might be like, I think the intensity that I felt like in a negative way might be because I'm not like super diehard Disney or Marvel or really, you know, anything that they had to offer. Star Wars, like I'm not, that's really not my wheelhouse. So whereas people were like, yeah, I've slept here since Friday. I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. Like my level of commitment, my level of passion wasn't there to not bathe for 3 days, smell like Funyuns, and walk around the convention center. Like it just wasn't there like that. And there were, I think I put a lot of that either on whoever was running the convention, or on Disney, or whoever was allowing this, because there were just like queues and queues and queues and queues and queues of people that would be there days and days ahead of time. What do you do? Like how can somebody like me who's like, no, I'm good. Like I still want to go. I'm paying the same amount that you're paying, right? I still want to go, but I don't want to sleep on the ground, not bathe, and smell like Funyuns. So like, is a recommendation, kind of my recommendation for people would be, unless you are sick about it, like sick in a good way, unless you're sick about it, really decide if that's what you want to do, because it was an extremely intense experience for somebody that didn't want to live there on the cement floor.
Yeah, I am like diehard, ride or die Disney, have been for a long time. And even I was like, this is insane. Mm-hmm. Like, for those of you who might not have gone to D23 or any conventions, like, we're not joking when they say people were literally sleeping either outside of the convention center in the California heat or in the basement of this place where I'm like, none of this is safe.
Yeah.
And it was all in the name of getting into a panel to see something that
all in the name of the hope of getting into a panel.
Correct.
Let's not talk guarantees. The hope of getting into a panel.
Correct. And then like some people, you know, they waited all that time in the wrong spot because somebody told them this was where you wait, and you didn't get into the panel still. I mean, I got into a shouting match, not one. Anyone who knows me knows it's not one. It was multiple. But on day one of D23, I got into a shouting match with people who worked at the convention because we were told we can wait here, we'd get into the panel fine. Mm-hmm. And then hours go by, and they're like, oh, no, that filled up. You guys missed it. And I was like, no, you told me to stay here, though. And they were just basically like, here's your line.
That's the magic. That's the magic.
Yeah. Like, they acted like it was a disappearing act, or they were mimes, like.
Right.
And I think, like, also, especially at Comic-Con, Maria and I have been to MegaCon, which is kind of like Comic-Con. But at Comic-Con, it's known that you are going to get sick because so many people are there. Like, it's like a con flu type of thing. Because so many, like, you're packed in there like sardines. Like, everyone's just accepted, like, I'm going to get sick. Right. And why? That's a lot of money to pay to get sick, knowingly get sick. So I think also to your point about attendance, like, it's insane. And the things they allow to happen is insane. Like, to me, they need to cut attendance back so it's enjoyable for everyone. And you also feel like you're getting a bang for your buck because these aren't cheap. Conventions are not cheap.
Could you foresee, like, maybe, like, especially if we're still, like, social distancing, like, that's going to be very difficult to be able to do for these type of conventions. Could you see some of these conventions splitting it into maybe 2 a year instead of just one? Because if we cut attendance in half, or even more than that, I still think the demand would be there for people to want to go. So now maybe I have 2 options. Maybe I have April and October that I can go. I think that could be an option.
I think that they kind of try that with like the San Diego Comic-Con and the New York Comic-Con. Those are like the 2 big ones.
Yeah.
They kind of try it, but the problem is you do the same thing at both. Like you max it out so much that everyone's just jam-packed. Like I think if they treated it kind of like how the World's Fair was, where it was like a week long, like there were multiple events type of thing, it would be different than try to cram it all in like 4 days.
Is there enough? Well, I mean, I know it's like usually events back to back to back, and there are kind of multiple at the same time. So I guess they could do that, but I don't. I mean, from a cost standpoint, like a profit loss standpoint, I don't know what that would look like. I mean, you're renting out the entire for D23, the example there, we're renting out the entire Anaheim Convention Center for now a week instead of 4 days, paying all the people to work the event, paying for security, paying for, I think then we start dipping into. So would you rather have it for a week and pay like 1.5 times the cost that you do go already, or no? Because that's where it would come from. It would come from us. We would pay the difference. The attendees would pay the difference.
Yeah. If you're going to go, you're going to go. Like, for anyone who's like, oh, that's too expensive for me, you say that until they say, like, oh, at this year's Comic-Con or this year's D23, Robert Downey Jr. is going to be there. People pull their checkbooks out. Like, you're going to pay what you want to pay for. I would rather pay double to go. If it's like those 3 days or 4 days in that convention center, I will pay double if you cut the attendance by like half.
And still not guarantee that you get into the panels. And you'd pay double.
No, because if you cut it in half, I'm gonna get into those things. Like, it's
I think there was more than half people waiting to get in to some of those on set. We were there. I
don't know.
I think there was more.
But even still, I would still pay. Yeah, I would still pay double if you cut it in half. Because also, I don't like people on top of me like that. Like, how many times did we walk through just to see exhibits, and you were walking like this the whole time? Like, it was like walking through a theme park times 7. Because you couldn't move. Yeah. Like, even think about it.
It was like walking through a Men's Health or Elle magazine with all the perfume ads, like smelling people. Like, I was like, let me just move this flap. And, or it was like, clearly they stayed the night. Like, that's the way it really was. Like, it was very much like I was so close to people. It was like riding public transportation or being in an airplane. Like, that's literally how it felt, how close you are to people, which is fine in limited time frames, like public transportation. But whenever I'm at a convention, whenever I'm on vacation and at a convention for like 3 days, that's a long time to be constantly surrounded by people that I said earlier smelled like Funyuns. That's a long time.
And even like you were saying, like the world that we live in now, with the pandemic, we've all noticed that we are vastly underprepared for these things. Yeah. And with people still fighting not to wear masks, what do you do? I mean, Comic-Con's already outgrowing the space they're in. D23, from the looks of it, is outgrowing that space they were in. Because, again, I'm not an architect, but I'm pretty sure people were, like, spilling out of that building. Yeah. Like, it was insane. So, do you make it a longer, like, festival type thing? Because a lot of, like you said, the panels, they overlapped. So you had to choose and sacrifice where you were going to go to see a certain thing. If I'm paying that much money, I shouldn't have to sacrifice anything. I should be able to go whatever I want to go to. And that's kind of where the mentality comes.
If you have it for like a week, imagine that's a huge burden for the attendees. I mean, you add 3 or 4 days already onto your hotel stays. Mm-hmm. Food and drink, and there were food options there that were mediocre at best, and
the food trucks were like the better thing.
And it's gonna be such a higher cost, and Disney already has that problem at their parks. If we're still talking about D23, that's why we're not seeing like more, like if you added more a different like world, like where if you added like Epcot, something else, like if you're adding different parks, they're not going to do that because families, they're not going to go. What they're going to do is if they're going to go to the new one, they're going to replace it with an old one. Disney has found like 3 years ago, hey, we've reached our limit currently with what people are willing to do. Why? Because Americans aren't taking as many vacation days as they can to begin with. Two, people need the money, so they're working more. They can't commit to being that far away from home for that long. So I don't know if you would see people, like the same amount of people staying for like a week long whenever we're already in a time where like you kind of hit your sweet spot with like the 3 to 4 days instead of 5-6 days sometimes. I think then people start sacrificing. The consumer starts sacrificing what they're willing to do because of just actual life, actual obligations that they have and finances.
But I think if you do it that way, people don't feel obligated that I have to go to all three all day. The only people who will are like the bloggers or the people who have like shows and stuff that dedicate their time to Marvel or DC or Warner Brothers. Like they're going to go the whole week. But if it's longer than that, people are going to pick, okay, on Tuesday and Wednesday is the Marvel panels. That's when I want to be in there. So I'll go these days. On Sunday is the Star Wars one. On Saturdays, the DC. Like they're going to choose their trips around which panels they want to go to. They're probably not going to stay the whole week. Like they'll choose their days, but it's still bringing in more like tourism into your town. Like Disneyland was packed when we went to D23. Imagine, I mean, it's usually always packed, but imagine if it's a week-long thing and you're getting even more people. Like those hotels that are around Disneyland, their prices are going to skyrocket because you're getting more and more people in for that convention.
Right.
So it's really only good for the town if they do that, because people are going to tailor their vacations depending on what they want to see, because not everyone who's a fan of pop culture is a fan of everything.
Right.
Like I don't like Lord of the Rings. I think it's extremely boring, and I know people are going to come at me for it. I don't care. I'm going to say it right now. It's just walking. It's all that's happening. It's walking hobbits with weird feet. It's not Harry Potter. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, so I do see people, like you said, making that distinction of what they're willing to spend their time at, and possibly choosing to go do something else so they don't have to whatever in the city. But then I think then a conversation like San Diego is arguably, like in terms of climate, like the best city in the United States. And it really is like the best city in the United States. So, I think that it'll be good for places like that. Places like Anaheim, outside of Disney, Anaheim looks a little rough. I don't know if you're willing. I don't know. I just don't know if the average consumer is like, well, let's take let's take a little trip to LA and spend the day in LA. It's just 40 minutes without traffic, 2.5 hours, 3 hours with traffic. let's load up the kids there and go to the beach. So you don't know, and then places like New York, of course, you could spend endless amounts of time in New York and not be bored. So then I think you're going to just see an influx and like a continued growth of major cities, South by Southwest in Austin. It's not really a convention, but a festival. You're going to see these urban places start growing more and more and more. If I think things are drug out farther, if they're allowed more time to be in those locations. And I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm still planning on going to D23 next year. I know that you are as well. And I'm curious after this like potential second wave come wintertime, what that's going to look like next year for planning for the event. I'm sure that they're already planning it. I'm sure that they've already talked about it. But just seeing how things are in terms of social distancing, in terms of increased cleanliness. In terms of cleanliness, it was a pretty shoddy experience because there was nothing. You could. There was yeah. You're afraid to leave. Like you are afraid to leave the line to like go to the bathroom because even if you're with a group of people, you know you're gonna have to fight off people like no, you weren't there. Like I was there. Like you almost have to go to people behind you and be like, hey, just let you know, I'm just 3 spots ahead. I'm gonna go pee. Hey, just so you know, I was 4 spots ahead. I'm going to go pee. Like, you literally have to do that to convince people that, like, oh, he was standing there. So, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't. I'm curious.
I think also, in terms of pop culture, I mean, if you look, like, Marvel has held, conventions where it's outside of D23 and Comic-Con, and they say, this is our slate of movies for the next 5 years. That didn't happen at any convention, right? It was like a press thing. Star Wars has a Star Wars celebration outside of D23 where it's all Star Wars. So, I mean, the more these brands keep building up their fan base, I wonder how many are going to just branch off and do their own, like, media convention. And Comic-Con's going to go back to being, like, the comic books and things like that. And how is going to go back to, like, a media. Like, these are the movies. These are the TV shows. These are cartoons and comics. Like, are they going to do that split to kind of separate it?
Do independent brands do that? Or does, like, Disney, for example, say, like, Star Wars, it's fine that you do this? Like, could they just turn around and be like, no, the only time I ever want you guys announcing anything is at D23. So that way more people go to D23. Like, who holds the cards in that circumstance?
That's a good question. I feel like it's Disney.
I do, too.
They can say, like, yeah, you guys can have... But I also
you guys can have your fun. You guys can have your fun, but let's not make any announcements. Let's not say anything.
That's also why they want to pull out of Comic-Con, though, is because Marvel won't have to compete like for press junket time with DC. Yeah. Because if you have your own thing, that's all anybody's going to write about. As opposed to Black Widow trailer, Wonder Woman trailer, now you're fighting for attention because you're both at the same convention. But if you split it, I mean, you're going to dominate the news cycle for how many weeks until they kick out something, you know? So I think it's also in the parent company's minds, like Warner Brothers, Disney, things like that. It's kind of like a marketing standpoint of this is all good publicity for us. Let's just get out of that game. Let them do what they're going to do, comic book wise and everything. But media wise is where we make our bank because comic book sales are like compared to the movies.
Right.
People aren't buying comics like they used to.
Right.
Yeah. People aren't buying comics like they used to, which is sad because it's a great medium. That's a different topic. But like these movie stars and stuff are the height right now. Like they are at the height of their careers. Why wouldn't you go to see them? So I think the more you can push them out in the public and all these different conventions that they can have, the better, because now it's just good publicity. Where like Adam Driver, I did not know Adam Driver before he was Kylo Ren. And now I will watch, he's like my top 3 actors because of Kylo Ren. I'll watch him in Marriage Story, Black Klansman. I don't care what Adam Driver's in. He could do a biopic of my life, and I'd be like, he's a better me than I am. Like, just because of Kylo Ren. So I think it's good that, you know, they try to branch out more and do that kind of stuff. I mean, the TED Talks, just to briefly touch on that, that's such a small, like, thing. It's only 1,500 people.
I did not know that.
But it's like $10,000 for a ticket.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's $10,000 for a ticket. But I mean, you hear
regardless of who's talking.
Yeah, but they're all talking about like super inspirational things. So people are like, I want to hear that.
I'll pay $10,000 a
same video
on YouTube, right?
Yeah. So maybe we should go to conventions and spend like $900 on a ticket.
Yeah. Maybe we should host a convention and charge $900 a ticket. I don't know, because if people can charge $10,000 for a TED Talk I can watch on YouTube for free, why not?
It's just the experience.
Yeah, of being there. Do I get a swag bag? Do I get anything?
Like iPads. In there?
Yeah, there better be. Like I better get a really nice swag bag. Like I better get like Academy Award nominated actor/actress type swag bags where they have like $28,000 worth of stuff, like where they have like all these lavish gifts. That's what I should be paying for if I'm going to these TED Talks. And it better not be a TED Talk in like Boise, Idaho either. I'm not paying 10 grand to go to Boise. I'm like, it better be in a destination if I'm gonna pay it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been to a TED Talk though. So if any of you guys have been to TED Talks, let us know A, if it was $10,000, and then B, let us know what
Your swag bag.
let us know why you ever did it.
Yeah.
Because we probably watched it for free. So
Even D23 gave us like those 3 posters that were like textured and everything, and we were like, "This is amazing!" Like,
Yeah.
they're just posters,
Right.
But even that, like,
we have to find a way to ship these properly. Like that's can't even get them on the plane.
we ran to that FedEx across.
Yeah.
How do we ship these like you would ship the Constitution? Like, I don't want them to go to places.
Right. There better not be a dent. How much is the insurance? We'll get insurance on them. Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it right now.
Yep. And I mean, that's just kind of, I think you get caught up in that fever of cons. They're a good thing for like society.
The FOMO.
Yeah. You know?
That's why they let people sleep on the streets and wait outside, because they're like, good, like you should be afraid of missing missing Robert Downey Jr. on stage, Jon Favreau.
Yeah.
You should be afraid of not seeing these people and experiencing the magic. Like,
yeah. You make the movie. Or what was it they had at D23? We make the movies, you make the magic. I swear to you, everyone who's watching, I teared up in that exact moment, and I have no qualms about saying it. I was like, yes, I did.
A single tear.
Yeah. In that moment when we got into that panel, I was like, everything was worth it. All of the like fighting.
How we got in the panel? Is that what you meant? How we got into the panel? Do you want to share that?
A friend of mine helped us get in, and I'm very grateful for him. David, if you're watching, thank you so much for getting us in. But truthfully, like in that moment, I was like, everything else was amazing. This is an amazing con just because we got into that panel. Had we not...
It went from like a 2 to an 8 out of 10 real quick just from that moment, because had we not gotten in there, I'm not saying it would have affected our friendship, but it was rough. It was real rough. Yeah, it was really rough. So yeah, let us know, you guys, if you're planning on going to any conventions after the COVID-19 epidemic next year, even later this. I don't know if there's going to be any later this year, but because a lot of things are being canceled. But later this year or next year, give us your thoughts and opinions on these, and also the information about the TED Talk too. But before we go, I wanted to ask everyone's opinion on. I'm going to start reserving like a small amount of time sometimes where we can talk about like our opinions on things that are like currently happening. Aunt Jemima, the syrup, like the whole kind of like you're seeing like a shift now, a shift with literally every product, everything. I used to live in a mid-sized city. I'm not even going to say mid-sized city, like a mid-sized city in the Midwest last year, and there's a restaurant in that, I just don't want to say where because like there's a whole bunch of things going on with this restaurant, but there's a restaurant in there that served like different like Confederate soldier named like breakfast, and I love eating breakfast there. I did. I absolutely love this restaurant. Amazing food. I never really had bad service. But then people started protesting outside of this restaurant, and it got so bad that the staff of that restaurant had to have police escorts whenever they left for work, and they just announced that they were permanently closing the restaurant. Permanently. It'll never reopen again.
Oof.
Because there were so many items and allegations too of kind of like a racist environment. Not so much from the owners. I had an in on somebody that worked there, and they had said that, you know, the owners were not racist, or at least the owners. I never experienced racism. The person said, not me. I never experienced racism directly from the owners. I did from some of the staff, but not from the owners. But it got so bad that it literally shut down for like ever. So whenever you're seeing stuff like I'm doing Aunt Jemima, because you and I have had like an inside joke about syrup in general, not Aunt Jemima brand, but like we've had a joke about syrup in general. Mm-hmm. Are you the shift that's happening now? Do you see it as like as okay? This is this is enough, because people weren't thinking. People like weren't thinking this about these items, or you're like, no, this is about time that these things change. Because I find it very interesting. There was a very, very old interview, where it appeared, though, like I wish that we could like cut to it, but it was with Morgan Freeman and Don Lemon, and they were talking about race relations in the United States. And there had been a lot of times where Morgan Freeman had been quoted like, just don't talk about it. Like, stop seeing me as a black man. I'll stop seeing, like, there's countless times where you've seen him kind of take that stance. I don't want to take those conversations out of context. I'm not saying that he did not follow that up with, there are injustices going on in this country, because he very may well have and probably did. But do you think that the media's focus on these items, so much as like syrup, are too much, or we're kind of like in the right direction? I'm literally putting him on the spot, so everyone. I was going to say, we literally did not discuss this at all.
I'm trying to look at my notes to see if there was a maple syrup convention that we didn't cover. I think
that'd be a disgusting convention. Sorry.
I think I'm in the middle, because on one hand, I haven't seen anyone like that was what they were saying they wanted. Once they want it changed immediately, right? Like they were calling for that. I haven't seen that. Right. But on the other hand, do I think it's about time? Like, yeah, especially knowing the history of the logo character and everything, what's based on. Yeah, it's about time. Like, why didn't that happen sooner?
I'm about to say, isn't it interesting how something that could be so toxic or so negative, if you just allow it for so long, it becomes. I never thought twice ever. I didn't even know. I didn't even think to know. You know what I mean?
I didn't know.
All I knew was that was the brand for a bottle of syrup that conveniently would fit in my refrigerator and in my microwave. Had the little picture of the microwave at the bottom that told me when it was hot. That's all I knew. That's all. Yeah. Seriously, that's all I knew. So I didn't put. I mean, shame on me, but like that's you just the media. It just goes to show the kind of the control that the media has on your attention. We're all like horses with like those blinders on, where like they tell you where to look. They tell you what's important. They tell you what's not important. They tell you who's credible. They tell you what's uncredible. Like they tell you kind of what you should be thinking. I think it's very dangerous sometimes.
I think it is, but I think in terms of like right now, I think it's one of those, was the company, even though no one was really calling for it right now, was the company not doing it because it was the right thing to do, but to get ahead of it and say, hey, we're taking this down, even though none of you said you wanted it down yet. We're going to take it down.
Right.
Just
don't. Yeah.
I think I don't think the reasons behind doing it were the most pure reasons, which is kind of what bothers me. But I do think that it was about time to do that. I think it's about time that you kind of looked at all of those, little caricatures and kind of think like, is this necessary right now? Like, the Washington Redskins have been in the news for years for their logo, for their football team. Years. There have been protests.
I went to a high school like with that. Like the Warriors, who did the stereotypical gestures. I'm not gonna do them clearly, but did the stereotypical gestures. Had like the little spear. Like had the whole like gambit.
Tomahawk.
Yeah, and even at that time, and I grew up. I grew up with a lot of the good old boys, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I grew up in a place where they had drive your tractor to school day. And even at that time, there were people who were like, I don't think that we should still continue to do this. There are countless high schools across the United States that have the Warriors as their logo. Countless.
Yeah. The Warriors, the Braves. Even just outright saying the Indians.
Right.
There's a lot. So I think that, is it something that, like I said, people were really passionate about at this time? No. But do I think it was the right choice? Yeah, I think it's the right choice to start looking at all of these things and start saying, like, is this necessary? Are these statues necessary? Are these caricatures necessary? Is any of this necessary to how you live your life? Because if it's not, and even if it bothers 10% of a population, then get rid of it. Because your life is not that impacted. You're not that passionate about it. That's more passionate than the 10% who's offended by it.
Right.
Like, you're using a group of people as a caricature. You're literally telling them you are a cartoon for us.
Right.
I don't know how you cannot be offended by that. So, I mean, I would definitely. I used to joke when I was younger, but I was like kind of serious. I was so shocked that there was a cleaning product called Spick and Span, and it was still out, and I was shocked. And I used to joke like, "Oh my gosh, that's so awful," because I know that's not what it's saying. But at the end of the day, like, I was really shocked that that's a product. And again, I'm not gonna make a big deal about it because that's not the context they're using it in. But these other groups who really did feel the Redskins logo is offensive, the Aunt Jemima logo is offensive. I saw people talking about like the Uncle Ben logo too. You know, you're making a group of people into caricatures for fun.
Right.
It's not a prideful thing. It's a fun thing. Like, you're basically using it to sell product or move product or something. Mm-hmm. And that's not, no one's a prop, you know? So I think that although it wasn't something that people were kind of on the front line screaming, like, get rid of Aunt Jemima, I think it was a smart move, and I think it was a good move because, again, it's not going to change how I feel about that product. I'm not going to be like, it's going to taste so different now. Like, it's going to be the same thing.
Right. Well, and that's the ironic thing that you see all these people like freaking out. Like, they've literally changed the secret recipe to the syrup. Ma'am, the syrup, sir or ma'am, the syrup still tastes exactly the same. It's still the same syrup. Like, Lady Antebellum, the country music group, is changing their name in light of this whole, in light of everything that's happening to Lady A. Like, they're still gonna churn out the hits.
Same music.
Right.
But also,
I don't know if you call them hits, but they're going to churn them out. I'm not a huge fan, but they're going to churn them out.
But also, like, you weren't that old of a group to not know what that meant.
Correct.
Correct. At least Aunt Jemima's been around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
You know, but
maybe I shouldn't have brought them up. Maybe I should have brought them up. But yeah, I mean,
mid-2000s.
That's the environment that we're in. So I always find it ironic whenever people are like so up in arms about this, acting like, no, we didn't say that you can't have syrup. We're not restricting the syrup. We're not changing the syrup. We're not increasing the price of the syrup. Everything stays the same, sir. Like, except for
the caricature.
Yeah, except for the offensive characters. Like, everything else stays the same.
And people are like, that was my favorite part.
Yeah. And that's scary. That's scary.
Yeah.
Because people are like, that was my favorite part. Like, we're just joking around, but that's true. Like,
yeah.
Well, yeah, now you can't, like, now we can't just be publicly in your face offensive anymore. Oh, rats. I can't disrespect other people. Get out of here. That's so crazy. That's so crazy. But
it's mind-blowing.
Yes. So we'd love to hear your opinions on that topic too. Not just about the syrup, but everything in general. In my opinion, and I'm sure Carlos shares this sentiment as well, on this whole movement, I think it's an incredible time for us to be alive physically and experiencing this. Like, we're literally seeing a shift in the human experience. So I think it's cool. Yeah. We absolutely have to document it. We absolutely have to talk about it. So make sure you guys let us know what you think. Like us on Facebook, Instagram, follow us on Twitter. Also check out our YouTube page. All of the links for those will be provided below this video for you guys. So thanks for tuning in today.
And that will do it for us on this pop cultural episode of Beg Pardon. As always, he's been Anthony, I've been Carlos. Remember, I said what I said about Lord of the Rings, and I'm not afraid. Until next time.